Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Mind Your Exam. So in this video we will be studying about what is flow control in data link layer and why is it required. So flow control is one of the most important responsibilities of the data link layer, and let us understand what actually it is and what are the approaches for performing flow control. So flow control basically means adjusting the speed of the sender according to the speed of the receiver. And why there is a need for adjustment? Because when the speed of the sender is higher than the receiving speed of the receiver, then some frames that are sent by the sender can get lost, because or they can be dropped or not received by the receiver. They can be dropped by the receiver because the receiver is operating at a slower pace, and if the sender is sending at a pace that is faster than the receiver, then the receiver will become overwhelmed with data packets, data frames, and he'll not be able to process all of them. So it might happen he'll have to drop certain frames so that he keeps up with the sending speed of the sender. So now one important point that you must remember here is that flow control will not be required if the sending speed is lower than the receiving speed, because when the sender is sending slowly and the receiver has the capability of receiving at a faster pace, then the receiver will not drop any frames. He is capable of receiving at a higher pace, so there is no need of performing flow control. So this is a very big mistake that children do while writing this definition, that students write higher or lower, or the difference in speeds requires flow control. No, when the sender is operating at a faster speed, then only we need to adjust the speeds and perform flow control at the receiving end. Okay, now what are the two main approaches for performing flow control? The first is the feedback based flow control and the second is the rate based flow control. So starting with what is feedback based flow control. Feedback basically means that the receiver will give information to the sender. He or she will give feedback to the sender about whether to send more packets or to wait for some time so that the receiver gets time to process the previous packets. Okay, so the receiver sends information, which is feedback, to the sender, and this feedback informs the sender and gives him the permission to send more data. So if the receiver is sending a frame back to the sender that says that send me more data, then the sender will send the next frame. But if the receiver says wait, do not send for next 10 minutes, then the sender has to wait for the next 10 minutes and then again see if the receiver is ready to accept the frames. Okay, so the receiver has to send the feedback to the sender, and the sender will wait for an acknowledgement from the receiver before sending in more data. So feedback that is being sent by the receiver is generally referred to as an acknowledgement. So what actually happens is that the sender sends out a frame to the receiver at the data link layer, and the receiver sends an acknowledgement which tells that this last frame has been received by me, and this acknowledgement is also an indication to the sender that you can now send the next frame, because the last frame that you sent has been received by me and I have processed it and send it further to the network layer of the receiving side. Okay, so we generally refer this feedback as an acknowledgement from the receiver, and the sender has to stop and wait until he or she receives the acknowledgement from the receiver for the previous frames. As soon as the acknowledgement is received, the sender starts sending more data. Now the second technique that is used for performing flow control is rate based flow control. Now in this scenario what actually happens is that the protocol or the set of rules that are governing the communication between the sender and the receiver, they beforehand specify the rate or the speed at which the senders can send their data. So there is no need of any kind of feedback or acknowledgement from the receiver. Okay, so the protocols that are being used to exchange data between the sender and receiver have predefined the speed at which the sender should send, and that speed is set up according to the receiver's capacity. So here no feedback is required from the receiver. So these were the two approaches for performing flow control at the data link layer. Please let us know if you have understood this topic and how did you find this video. Thank you for watching. Till we meet in the next video. Mind your exam.